Hello, today we're going to do a virtual reading lesson, and there are three components to this lesson. We will read, and I will read along with you, the story. There are questions that go along to it, and that's found in your slides at the end of the story. There's also a reading skill and a graphic organizer that you are to complete. And then the third piece that you are to do, this we're talking about the work that you do along with this lesson, is a writing response. And that is it's like the last page of the slide of the story. So the reading skill that we're going to talk about this week is called drawing conclusions. And reading skills are something that we practice, just like we practice reading to get better, we practice skills to get better at reading and to better understand, better comprehend what it is we're reading. So drawing conclusions are really similar to making inferences. When we make an inference, we look at the clues to make a prediction of what's going to happen. Drawing conclusions is basically the same thing, that we look at the clues around us and we're like, okay, this is going to happen. It's kind of like making a little bit of a judgment too. So if you were to have baked some cookies and gone out of the room and you come back and there's cookies missing and you see crumbs all over your brother or your sister's face, you might draw the conclusion that they were the one who ate the cookies. Another example would be that it's all of a sudden the temperature drops and the wind starts blowing and it gets really dark outside all of a sudden. We might draw a conclusion that it's getting ready to storm. And we base that on our prior knowledge. In the story, the author doesn't always come right out and say things. There will be hints or clues that help us to see what may happen or why something happens. So we'll talk further about that when we get into our reading of the story. If you follow along with your slides while I'm reading, you'll see the first couple of pages are some vocabulary words. Most of these shouldn't be new, but you can have an example there of some words, and that's optional to maybe write some sentences with some words or look up further some words that you aren't so familiar with. And then if you go right past that, there's a page that says read and comprehend. Conclusions, which is our target skill. In The Goat in the Rug, the authors do not tell you everything you need to know. Ask questions about details in the words and pictures. Looking for text evidence will help you make a smart guess about what is happening. So that's a very important part of this, is you make your smart guess, but you have that's the clue. That's the thing that the author has written that makes you guess what's happening, and you need to support it in some way. Making a smart guess is called drawing a conclusions. And then they include a chart did I write it? No, I didn't. That looks like this. You have detail, 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 all pointing down to the conclusion that is drawn your smart guess. This is really rough. I just did it really quickly, but this is like your graphic organizer. It looks something like this, right? Okay. So, I encourage you, I'll give you some smart guesses to help you along with this, and then you can go back in the text, and include your text evidence, your details. So, let's go ahead and get started reading The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine. And this was told to Charles L. Blood and Martin Lake. So this was an oral story that was recorded. It is narrative nonfiction. It's a true story that was told. And it's told in the perspective of the goat. So there is a little bit of whimsy here because yeah, you'll see. But this is based on true happening, a real person and her pet goat. All right, so if you look in your slides, we start off reading on page 200. 80 right here. It says, "My name is Geraldine, and I live near a place called Window Rock with my Navajo friend Glen May. It's called Window Rock because it has a big round hole in it that looks like a window open to the sky. Glen May is called Glen May most of the time because it's easier to say than her Indian name, Gli Nasba. In English, that means something like female warrior. But she's really a Navajo weaver. I guess that's why one day she decided to weave me into a rug." I remember it was a warm, sunny afternoon. Glen May had spent most of the morning sharpening a large pair of scissors. I had no idea what she was doing to use them for. I had no idea what she was going to use them for, but it didn't take me long to find out. Reading in the chair. Before I knew what was happening, I was on the ground and Glen May was clipping off my wool in great long strands. It's called mohair, really. It didn't hurt at all, but I admit I kicked up my heels some. I'm very ticklish for a goat. I might have looked a little naked and silly afterwards, but my, did I feel nice and cool. So I decided to stick around and see what would happen next. The first thing Glen May did was chop up roots from a yucca plant. The roots made a soapy rich lather when she mixed them with water. She washed my wool in suds until it was clean and white. After that, a little bit of me, you might say, was hung up in the sun to dry. When my wool was dry, Glen May took out 2 large square combs with many teeth. By combing my wool between these carding combs, as they're called, she removed any bits of twigs or burrs and straightened out the fibers. She told me it helped make a smoother yarn for spinning. Then Glen May carefully started to spin my wool, one small bundle at a time, into yarn. I was beginning to find out it takes a long while to make a Navajo rug. Again and again, Glen May twisted and pulled the wool. Then she spun it around a long, thin stick she called a spindle. As she twisted and pulled and spun, the finer, stronger, and smoother the yarn became. A few days later, Glen May and I went for a walk. She said we were going to find some special plants she would use to make dye. I didn't know what dye meant, but it sounded like a picnic to me. I do love to eat plants. That's what got me into trouble. While Glen May was out looking for more plants, I ate every one she'd already collected in her bucket. Delicious! The next day, Glen May made me stay home while she walked miles to a store. She said the dye she would buy wasn't the same as the kind she makes from plants, but since I'd made such a pig of myself, it would have to do. I was really worried that she would still be angry with me when she got back. She wasn't. She wasn't, though, and pretty soon she had 3 big potfuls of dye boiling over a fire. Then I saw what Glen May had meant by dyeing. She dipped my white wool into one pot, and it turned pink. She dipped it in again. It turned a darker pink. By the time she'd finished dipping it in and out and hung it up to dry, it was a beautiful deep red. After that, she dyed some of my wool. After that, she dyed some of my wool brown and some of it black. I couldn't help wondering if those plants I'd eaten would turn all of me the same colors. Shh. While I was worrying about that, Glenmay started to make our rug. She took a ball of yarn and wrapped it around and around 2 poles. I lost count when she'd reached 300 wraps. I guess I was too busy thinking about what it would be like to be the only red, white, black, and brown goat at Window Rock. Obi. Shh. It wasn't long before Glenmay had finished wrapping. Then she hung the poles with the yarn on a big wooden frame. It looked like a picture frame made of logs. She called it a loom. After a whole week of getting ready to weave, Glenmay started. She began weaving at the bottom of the loom. Then, one strand of yarn at a time, our rug started growing toward the top. A few strands of black, a few of brown, a few of red, in and out, back and forth, until in a few days the pattern of our rug was clear to see. Our rug grew very slowly, just as every Navajo weaver before her had done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Glenmay formed a design that would never be duplicated. Then at last the weaving was finished, but not until I checked it quite thoroughly in front and in back. In front and in back. Oh, sorry. But not until I checked it quite thoroughly in front and in back did I let Glenmay take our rug off the loom. It's kind of hard to see from this angle. There was a lot of me in that rug. I wanted it to be perfect, and it was. Since then, my wool has grown almost long enough for Glenmay and me to make another rug. I hope we do very soon, because you see, there aren't too many weavers like Glenmay left among the Navajos. And there's only one goat like me, Geraldine. So there it says, this is the true story of a weaver and her goat who lived in the Navajo Nation at Window Rock, Arizona. And then here on this page, this is our digging deeper, drawing our conclusions. So again, it tells us what conclusions, what it means to draw conclusions. And so one of the examples, and I can't remember what page it was on, but the one where Glenmay started to dye the wool pink and black and brown, Geraldine thought that she drew the conclusion that she was going to turn those colors. So if you wanted to use text evidence, you could make your graphic organizer with your conclusion. Geraldine thought she was going to turn those colors Y. Also, another conclusion that you might have drawn from reading is that wasn't stated is that Geraldine was a good pet. What evidence in the story, what details would lead us to draw that conclusion? And finally, another conclusion that can be drawn is that it is important that Glenmay continue to weave rugs. And so you can look for evidence in the text for that. So that's your task for your reading skill. You have your page of questions. It says turn and talk. You can't turn and talk with a partner, but if you want to discuss it with your parents, or you can just write it on a sheet of paper. It says, how is art connected to the past? Discuss your ideas. And it's kind of funny because I remember reading the story when I was in second grade. So I don't know when the story took place, but definitely more than 30 years ago. And then some questions, the 1, 2, 3 questions there. Which pictures help you understand what the authors do not tell you? Obi, shh. My dog keeps crying. He wants to be on my lap. What do you think would be the hardest step in making a Navajo rug, and why? So you can go back through they give you like all the steps on how you can make a Navajo rug, which is pretty cool. And then number 3, why is it important for Glen May to do each step in order? Well, so there you go. And then for your writing, which I encourage you to do on Wednesday, I put that on your Wednesday work plan. Looks like that page there. It says response, what steps does Glen May take to make the rug? Draw each step, then write the steps below the pictures. Use text evidence to help you list the steps correctly. So this is like our sequence of events would be our steps in making the rug. Draw the picture, write the steps. Bada bing, bada boom. Writing tip, it says use words such as first, then, after that, and finally. We also talked about those words like next. Shh. Obi. So I know we did sequencing and talked about those words a little while ago, so this should jog your memory of when we write things in order, it helps to use those words. So, okay, that is your reading, writing, follow-up work lesson for the week. We'll see you later.